Hello Jammers, Sapsapello here, and I'm here to tell you a story about the Possessive Spike. And here it goes. A long time ago, back in the beta days, a new person had joined the Animal Jam community. But no one knew his name. No matter how many times they clicked his username, it said New Jammer. He became to be known all around Jamal, so people just called him Anonymous, which means just secret. He was very poor. No gems, no nothing. All he had was a few necklaces, but wasn't effing. He tried as hard as he could to make friends and get gems and possibly have a family, but everyone seemed to ignore him. He wished there was a way that he could have more power, a way that things could go his way, but nothing could help him until one day. On one of his many quests to find friends or a family, he came across a hidden room and found some hidden books. He pulled a book down from a shelf. A secret cabinet opened. He walked inside of it. He found an old, dusty book. He opened it. It was full of Animal Jam secrets that no other jammer knew about. It was written by F-Man himself. He turned to a few pages when he came across an item that could change Jamal forever. He smiled as he stared at the page. The Possessive Spike. If you put it on your wrist, then you'll have the powers to control any jammer that looks directly at it. The red marks on the spike represent each jammer you control. For already 3 jammers have been captured and their spirits have been sealed into the spike. For you can change their spirits and their personalities with this simple spike. He smiled. He just had to find it. But how? He flipped through a couple more pages when he noticed one was stuck to the other. He ripped it apart. There was the map of how to find the Possessive Spike. He opened the page. He looked at it. He said that it read that there was a secret canyon by Mitch-Severe. If you go into it and go deep within the river, then you will find the Possessive Spike. But know that it is protected by the angels of Jamal, so that no animal could take it to use its power for evil. Only someday, the right jammer will come to release the spirits. But there is so much hate inside that spike that the angels cannot unleash it. With so many jammers being scammed these days, all it seems to be is a horror fest of tears and whines and bans. So, no one really cares about the Possessive Spike or about what could happen if someone grasped it. Because mostly no one knows about it, except him. He walked to Mitch-Severe and looked down. Sure enough, there was a bunch of mountains not covered with snow, but with dirt. He wondered why Jamal hasn't made this a land already. Perhaps it was too much in the form of a coral canyons that they didn't need another canyon. He climbed over the rocks and into the little valley. He looked around, and deep within the river, he found a waterfall. He walked towards it. He looked back at his book. He noticed that in the top right corner, there was a little waterfall that had a cave in it. Why would they hide this? He wondered. Then he went closer to the waterfall, and sure enough, there was the Possessive Spike. He ran towards it. No angel seemed to be guarding it, so he grabbed it. Immediately, the spike grasped his wrist. He felt happy. He felt pleased. And there's already 3 jammers under his control. He looked at the spikes. He noticed little buttons that were attached to each of them. He pushed one. It showed the spirit and where he was at. He was sleeping in a small cave in a canyon. Perhaps that's where the spirits go when they're not being controlled, he wondered. So he went farther into the cave, and sure enough, the 3 jammers went in there. He pushed the button again, and it came to life. All he had to do was whisper into the little button, and they would do his every command. The jammer was filled with power as his eyes lowered. He fell into a deep trance. He saw a vision. It was him, and he had a crown on his head. He was marching through Jamal with many minions. He thought to himself, is this what's going to happen to me? I'm going to become the king of Jamal? He smiled. The trance broke, and he has woken up. He looked at his spike. It was time to control some jammers. He looked around Jamal, and he came across a very rare person. Half of their trade was filled with headdresses and spikes. He realized that perhaps he could control them to make them give him the spikes. He immediately went for them. He said hi. The jammer looked away. Then he stuck the spike right into their eyes. They fell into a deep trance, which then made another spike go red on his wrist. He whispered into it, trade me all your rare spikes and headdresses. And the jammer did as she was told. She traded each and every spike that was on her list and in her inventory. They totaled up to about 30 in total. 20 spikes and 10 headdresses. He never felt so powerful before, because he never was powerful. He's outsmarted F-Men and many other great viruses. Now, he was just a living scam. No jammer really seemed to care about him, but until they looked at the wrist, that's why it would possess them, because the way they looked at it, it would put them in a deep trance to follow the wolf. So, his wrists turned all red. He wondered what that meant. He quickly opened up the book and said now he had the power to control every jammer that stared at it. For his power was so strong that it couldn't even hold it. The wrist broke, and it lay there on the ground. He picked it up, but he made a bad mistake. He stared at it, and he fell into the trance himself. He quickly knocked himself out of it, and sewed the wrist back together. He snapped it back onto his wrist and walked around Jamal again. He wondered how jammers would be in their trance now. He looked at the wrist, but not that much, because he knew what would happen if he did. And he looked around. He saw a pretty beta person, so he walked over, stuck the wrist in their face. They were put in a trance, but something else happened. His spirit went into that person's, and the other person went into his body, as if they switched bodies. The wolf smiled with joy, for this is what he wanted, to be a rare beta person, but his wolf already had pretty much everything that he wanted. He looked around. He was in a den, the Crystal Palace den, and then he went back to Jamal, where he saw his old body laying down near the Jamal Central sign, sleeping, with the wristband on. He looked down at his wrist. There was a black wrist on it, but it wasn't a possessive one. Realizing that the jammer was still in a trance, he quickly snatched the wrist with his eyes closed and snapped it back on his wrist. He was powerful again. Then he was walking around with a regular wrist on one arm and one on the other. Jammer stared at him, which was now a her due to the body. But they still stared. And every time they stared, the wrist grew more powerful. It came to obey him every command. He soon became more powerful than before, demanding his minions to hack into anAnimal Jam and give him diamonds and gems and whatever he wanted. He became greedy, and sooner or later he was going to turn into an evil beast. Everyone worshipped him. Some jammers managed to survive, not all of them. What he didn't realize is that the other world, in real life, the people were being tranced too. From 7-year-olds to about 16-year-olds. But he didn't think about that. He didn't know that anAnimal Jam's technology was too strong. Perhaps it was a hack, like F-Man's virus. Either way, he didn't care, and he was too clueless to think about it. A few days later, a knock was at his door. He opened it. A man in black was standing there with a contract. He seemed to be about 13, but he kept wondering. He asked him to sign a form that would give him every anAnimal Jam plushie that there was. He thought back, and he realized that he said, send someone. He said, you will be my new slave, and you will get me every anAnimal Jam outfitter. He looked down at the man's feet. There was a package. It was a big package labeled anAnimal Jam supplies. He smiled and frowned at the same time, but he signed the form anyways, and he went back to his gaming days. He was so clueless that he didn't realize that the real world was being in his trance too. That just made him even more powerful. He didn't realize technology was so strong. He could have just about anything he wanted, anytime he wanted. So, with that, he continued to have jammers do his bidding and get him whatever he wanted. A few days later, an angel flew back to the waterfall to check on the spike. She soon realized it was gone and sounded the alarm. The alarm was reflections off her wings and a giant shine of light from her halo. Other anAnimal Jam angels sprouted their wings and flew towards the flashing lights. She explained what must have happened, and they quickly scattered across Jama. They told Myra what had happened, and then they all realized what happened. anAnimal Jam was also clueless about the hacks that they could have created. For 2014 technology is stronger than back in 2005 when anAnimal Jam was created, I think. They had to do something. Myra quickly ordered the angels to go after this person, and that they did. She sent eagles out to patrol the skies of Jamal for any creatures. Then she noticed an army of jammers with glowing red eyes marching right towards the statue. She flew towards it. She started to fight all the jammers that were attacking it. Those who weren't controlled by this spike just stood back in fear. But they didn't realize who the one behind this was. He was hiding in a clothing shop next to the Myra statue. He watched with a giant smile on his face. All the jammers were being controlled by him, and not anAnimal Jam HQ. He managed to allow them cuss when they wanted, scam when they wanted, do anything they possibly could to take over the world. Half of his army was half of anAnimal Jam, so only half remained. The alphas and a few other jammers. When he realized this, that when he captures the alphas, he'd be able to take over most of the world. He grinned very big. He would soon be the new king of Jamal, just like the spirits told him. No matter what he tried, no matter what other jammers tried, he was unstoppable.